I wish to read the perspective of Reverend Dr. Sipribo Dwane on Ethiopianism. So I have condensed, I've shortened this because of time. I'm just going to read 4 pillars according to Bishop Sipribo Dwane. Sipribo Dwane said that anyone who recognizes the role of learning in Ethiopianism but has no knowledge of the event of the 1st November 1892 in Pretoria is still a spoon-fed infant in the teachings of Ethiopianism. He is trying to lead others with no experience at all. Because of the first day of November in 1892, tear gas of words was fired at the center of God's temple. On that day, Reverend Mokone and a group of clergymen learned the ropes of war of words erupted between Mokone and the ministers of the Methodist congregation. Ethiopianism was established and birthed. Mokone, the forerunner and the backbone of the congregation, told the Methodists that racism must not be allowed in the altar because it is an insult to God and to the pure theology of the Ethiopianism. It is also suggests that God condones mixing evangelism and racism. Mokone then looked at the people and said to them, "Those who are with God must come to me." He informed the Methodist congregation that we are all of God and we have the same empathy of all share and calling. Therefore, God needed clarity on that day, which side was he on? This is the question Mokone asked. The question reminds us of Desmond Tutu, who said he would also ask that question to God when he's in heaven, that which side God was on when black people was ill-treated by apartheid in South Africa. Mokone, the double-edged weapon, was based on the words of the Presbyterian veteran Theo Soka in Psalm 68, which says Ethiopians must stretch out their hands towards God. This is the first pillar of Dr. Dwane on what is Ethiopianism. Dwane, an African theologian, said one should examine the book and the petition that was written by Mokone and sent to the Methodist ministry. The program of racial discrimination interposed and the Christianity inside the church is wrong. And Mokone said, and I quote, "I am trying to swallow this, but I choke. Assist me, this theology is misleading." This is what Mokone said inside the church. Sipribo Dwane noted that the book reported a verbal stick fight and an evidence fireworks because of the prevalence in the racial discrimination Mokone stood against. Mokone directed the words against the racial discrimination and its evil programs. He claimed that the African was to fear the church hierarchy more than God. For whites equated the church program with God, Dr. Dwane noted that Mokone was flexible with Ethiopianism and African theology. Although whites talk about equality, some people were deemed more equal than others. In other words, all ministers of religion called by whites are called by God, while blacks are called by whites. So this was the argument of Mokone inside the church, and it was very much against racism. And today, I wish we can get leaders of his caliber to stand in our country and say racism is evil. Mokone argued that civilization and education must not be used to tame and despise and dehumanize Ethiopianism. Because education then was used to say, look, Ethiopianism is wrong. Because black people wanted to know themselves, black people wanted to have their own dignity and worship black God who understands their norms and values. And this is what Mokone fought for. Dr. Tuane also showed the separating faith from the center of culture. Ethiopianism, according to Dr. Tuane, this is very important. Dr. Tuane said, when white people arrived in this continent, there were no black people here. Yeah. Black people became black when whites arrived. We were not black before they arrived here. We were people. We were Ethiopians before white people arrived in this continent. But when they arrived, then we changed. We became black people, and they became white. And this is what Mokone said, look, it's time black people worship their God who is pitch black. The African Theology and further clarified the 19th and the 20th century view that the land issue must be in the center of Ethiopianism. So we wish that Ethiopianism can lead this campaign. You can never be Ethiopian without the land. This is what Dr. Tuane said. It is true. You can only see the blessings of God when you have the land. Ethiopianism was about that. It was about the dignity of black people. And the dignity of black people outside the land. Never forget about that. How can you have a dignity when you don't have the land? This is what Mokone addressed the Methodist Church about it. He said, we cannot worship together. Why? During the week, we have people we call members. And in the church, inside the church, we're brothers and sisters. That is not true. So this is the theology of Mokone, which I believe we need that theology in South Africa today. The patriots of Ethiopianism insisted that because white people stole and killed and used spears and guns to confiscate the black man's land, it is true that black people, and I'm shocked that Dr. Tuane said this. You know, this is very much unlike Dr. Tuane. Dr. Tuane said that indlela ephucukileyo yokufumana into exuthwe kuwe kuyifumana ngalandlela ixuthwe ngayo. Dr. Tuane said it is also important to know that it was not only white people who opposed Ethiopianism. Some African also did. Lamola and J.T. Jabavu, the father of and the professor of J.T. Jabavu, Fortier, and the founder of Izimbo Zabantundu, he also believed that Ethiopianism was just a political movement. Dr. Tuane admitted that not all whites opposed Ethiopianism and its program. For example, a particular minister came from France and his name was Godwin. This man said, it is time for black people to worship their God freely. It is not good for black people to worship God through whiteism. We don't have to go through whiteism. We have to go to God straight. So this is what Mokone said. Let me conclude. This is quite a long speech, but then so the last part. Today, Ethiopianism must rise and appeal to the pride of black people. Simingenyawo njengabantu abamnyama abangamaTOPIYA. Sonke abantu abamnyama singamaTOPIYA. NingumTOPIYA nami kodwa opassive. They are active Ethiopians, so I'm a passive one. Lastly, African theologian Dr. Duane noted that it is important not to forget to thank the real God whose arms are outstretched over the entire continent of Africa and who manifests his power in infants and babies of Africans, the giver of life, who loved the land and African continent. Duane further says, it's time for all of us as Ethiopian to sing loudly and say to God, you are also good to us. Black people are not black, but Ethiopians. They were not born black, they were black because white arrived in this continent. Before that, they were Ethiopians. Therefore, we have to live like Ethiopians. The message and the theology of Malandela Mokone is very relevant. And the best way to bring back the stability and the dignity of the church is to appeal to our ancestors. The best way is to appeal to the ancestors. Facebook, because the best advice of the church is in the past. Let it be so. Ukoni ngoma eculo ngamaTOPIYA isithi mandiphile njengomTOPIYA, mandiphile njengomntwana. Thank you very much.